All right. Well, thanks again for joining us this afternoon. I am excited to be talking with you all today about the Spring 2025 time study for coordinators. This will be our fourth round of collecting data. So we did a round in fall of 2024. We did spring of 2024 and we did fall of 2023. So the spring and fall of 23, that was our pilot. And we targeted about 20 districts, invited folks to join in that pilot. The next round, which was 2024, we opened it up, invited anyone who wanted to participate with us to do that. And so the first round, we had about 20 coordinators that completed the time study. In our last round, we went up to 70, I think there were 74 or 75 coordinators that participated, and we're trying to reach a doubling again. So we're trying to get to around 140 coordinators to participate at this point. And we feel like that is a really good sample of coordinators from across the state. So hopefully, if you haven't already, although I recognize some names, if you haven't already signed up on the interest form, after you hear my information this afternoon, hopefully you will join us for the time study. It is totally voluntary. And so I'm going to get into my PowerPoint just so I don't forget any pieces here, but I want to talk about the questions we're trying to answer in the time study, what we're asking coordinators to do, like what's the commitment if you do join that, and then what are going to be some of the benefits if you do decide to join the time study. So let me get this going here. All right, you should see a big blue screen. Got the thumbs up there. I just have a few slides to share with you all, mainly just to keep myself on track. But the first thing I want to cover is why do a time study. But before I get into these, I want to say that if you have questions throughout, please use the raise hand function. I think we're a small enough group that that's perfectly okay. We can stop and have discussions if you have questions as we go along through the PowerPoint and the discussion. So. All right, so why do a time study? So first of all, we want to gain a deeper understanding of the how time is being allocated across various tasks for a coordinator. We want to use that information to guide us at the division and on various committees and things that other groups that we work with. We want to use that actual data to discuss to um, guide the discussions, any policy or procedure decisions that might need to be made, resource allocations. We want to use data, right? We want to use information that is accurate when we're having those discussions and making decisions. Another reason is to help the coordinators help you guys to become more self-aware of how you're planning your days. The first few rounds of this that we did, we heard consistently from coordinators that it was very eye-opening, that they didn't realize how much time they were spending in one area or another. So they gained some self-awareness in how they themselves operated on a day-to-day basis and found that very beneficial. So we have some questions that we're trying to answer. How do coordinators spend their time? that's the main one there. How are folks spending the time? And what activities take the most time? How often are coordinators being asked to do non-FRYSC activities? We had a lot of anecdotal data around coordinators who were being asked to do things that were outside of the scope of FRYSC so often that it was impacting the FRYSC work, right? Like they're being asked to substitute teach. They're being asked to do, bus line every day, those types of activities. But it was very anecdotal, right? We didn't know the extent because we would just hear from a coordinator here and there. We wanted to really get down to see what that really looked like. We also wanted to compare what we're calling direct support activities to indirect. And direct support are those things like individual interventions, group programs, home visit, parent activities, family nights, things where you're directly involved with students or families, comparing that to meeting time, administrative tasks, entering stuff in FRYSC counts, doing your infinite campus entry, those types of things. So that was a big question for us. We also wanted to know how often folks were working past regular hours, right? So if you're scheduled to be there, like me, 8:30 to 4:30 with a 30-minute break, how often do you work to 6? Or how often do you come in at 7? How much is that happening across the state? One thing that we added in this round, this most recent round, is looking at demographic information and how that changes how the time is spent. So we did a post survey in this most recent round where we asked things like education level, how many staff, right? Like is there an assistant coordinator or another admin person, or do you have an AmeriCorps member? Or a really regular volunteer who's in the center, on a scheduled basis. We also asked, how long have you been a coordinator, right? Because we wanted to see how those things impacted how the time was spent. And that has brought up a lot of really good questions, right? Like if there's an assistant in the center, how does that change how the coordinator is spending the time? Is there more time for direct support, or is there more time for that indirect, which is kind of that brokering of services, right? Like community meetings, those types of things. So a lot of really interesting questions have come out of that, which we're still working through, right? We don't know all the answers yet, but at least we have some data. Um, so those are the things that we are trying to get at. And before I move on to the next slide, I'm going to stop talking for just a minute and see if anybody has any questions about that. Okay, we can always come back to that if something comes up for somebody. Okay, so what we're asking coordinators to commit to with this time study is reporting for at least 10 consecutive work days. So that would be two weeks with, 5-day work weeks for 2 weeks in a row. The reporting period is going to be open from April 28th to May 2nd. So you can pick any 10 consecutive days within that time period to do the reporting. We're asking folks to use a Google form, so it's pretty easy to fill out, to select an activity for each 15-minute increment of the day. And it's a lot. I recognize that we are asking a lot with this because it is every 15 minutes for 10 days. And so we'll see some benefits. We'll see some benefits in a second here on another slide to if you do agree to do that. And we want folks to be honest about their time. This is not being used to look at any like individual situation and dissect it and talk about one coordinator specific situation. Okay, we're putting all the data together and we're using aggregate data when we look at any presentations that we do, when we start looking at decision making, those kind of conversations, it's all aggregated data. So we really want people to be honest, about their time. Like if you are being asked to do non-FRYSC tasks, nobody's going to get in trouble, because of that. I mean, it just helps us to make better decisions if we have that information. So I'm going to get a little bit into what it looks like, what the form looks like, and the resources that we have available to folks. But first, what do you get out of it? First of all, your voice is heard, and we will know the story of your time. When results from the previous time studies have been presented, which I do believe several of the regional program managers have presented results at regional meetings, they have heard things like, well, that's not how my day goes, right? That's not how it works in my school, or that's not how it works in my district. Um, and we won't ever know the story of your time if you don't participate in it, right? So we can only make decisions based on what data we have. And so this is an opportunity to get your voice heard and tell your story. We do have a drawing for free conference registration of your choice, either Fall Institute or Victory Over Violence. And that's anybody who completes the 10 consecutive days gets entered into that drawing. And so, that's saving a couple $100 potentially. Um, we also now have the ability to do an individual report. This last round, the fall 2024 round, we were lucky enough to partner with a data analyst at Pritchard Committee, who has helped us design a data dashboard for this information. So what we're able to produce is the results statewide, is at the top, and then your individual results are at the bottom, so that you can compare how your day is being spent to what the averages are across the state. And we feel like that's a great tool to use with advisory councils, with your school leadership, with community folks, whoever, so that you can say, this is how I spend my time. This is the work that I'm doing. I think it could be really helpful if somebody's asking you to do something else. You know how FRYSC is kind of like those go-to people in the schools, and you can say, I can help, but these are the things that I'm already doing. So where, should I fit that in? That's a good strategy to use with leadership, I think, is to show them how you really are spending your time and how that compares across the state. So we do have that capability now to get that individual report out to folks. All right, so that's the end of that first little presentation. Does anybody have any questions before we jump into what the form actually looks like and some of the resources that we have for folks who agree to join our little merry band of time studiers? I don't know. Can we call ourselves like something fancy like time lords or something? I don't know. Isn't that Doctor Who? I don't know. My best friend's a Doctor Who fan. I don't.
There was a question in the chat list. So can you repeat the 10 days? I think we put on there that there's not 10 days between April 28th and May 2nd. It's a week. Will be the week before or the week after that.
I'm sorry, say that again.
What 10 days? What 2 week time frame are we looking at?
So you can pick any in between that, in between those days. So let me pull my calendar out here so I can give a good example. So it's basically going to be open through, and of course I don't keep numbers in my head, so I have to go back and look. And actually that's not right. Sorry, my slide is wrong. Thank you for pointing that out. It's actually April 28th through May 28th. It's for an entire month. So my apologies. My apologies for that mistake on my slide, and thank you for that. So you basically have an entire month to select 10 consecutive days. So for example, um, I'm taking some vacation, so I might do, the week, the 2 weeks before my vacation, there might be spring break in there, those types of things. So you can pick which 2 months. And, honestly, it will probably stay open until the 30th of May so that we can capture an entire month. Right. So Let me make a note to correct my slide. All right. Anything else? Any other questions so far? Okay. Now I'm going to show what the if you decide to join the time study, what the form actually looks like that you'll be filling out and what the different activities are. So let me get this shared. Okay, so I'm sure you guys have seen Google Forms before. Pretty easy to do. We are asking for email and name and district. And the first thing is the date that you're reporting. So this will be the day that you're reporting your activities for. Um, we want your region, and then we get down to the activities. So I have another uh, document to share here. See if I can find it. Okay, so you should be seeing the list of activities. So for each 15-minute increment, you pick one of these kind of broad categories for activities. So if you were on a home visit, that one's pretty self-explanatory. Meetings outside the center. If you're preparing for a program, and those are things like picking up supplies, ordering supplies, doing the planning for the program. Um, Professional development, individual student intervention, parent guardian intervention, group intervention, school district meetings. So these are things like leadership, staff meetings, also advisory council. I've added that to the example on the form. We had in the last round quite a few folks who used other not listed for advisory council meetings. And so I added as an example. So these are all meetings that are kind of school-based meetings. Administrative tasks, lots of that, right? Infinite Campus, FRYSC counts, working on your budget, doing your, CPP, all that kind of fun stuff. That all goes into admin. KCSI meetings, activity, and strategies. Those are for our schools who are a part of the Kentucky Community Schools Initiative, and there are 40 of those, and they know who they are. So we just added that on there for them because they want to collect that information. Um, the next two, the first one is non-FRISC assigned duties. So these are those things that a principal or a leadership person in your building asks you to do on a regular basis that's outside of your normal FRISC activities. Then we have duties not assigned because everybody recognizes that the FRISC coordinator is a member of the school team, right? And there are times when everybody on the school team needs to jump in and help. And that might be lunchroom duty. That might be car rider pickup line. That, those things are good for the FRISC coordinator to do when they're acting as a part of a school team, but not assigned, right? Like not every day, not all the time, not every Monday, it's when there's an emergency, right? When somebody needs to step in and help out. That's what that not assigned non-FRISC duty is. Um, so like it says, jumped in to help, right? Jumped in to help when your school team needs that to happen. We did add assist with testing in here because that's another anecdotal activity that we've heard from FRISC coordinators that happens, and I think specifically in the spring. So other not listed. I mean, there we could go on and there could be like 900 things on this list, right? right? And it just got a little long if we didn't cut it off at some point. So we do have other not listed on here. And you do have the opportunity to enter in what that was if you picked other not listed. And then we have not working during this time. And so on the time study, you will see, let me jump back over to this one. We are starting at 7:30 in the morning, and it runs through how long we ran it through 4 o'clock. So we recognize that your schedule may be a little different than that. You may not come to work until 8. You may get off at 3:30. So on the form, if you get off at 3:30, the 3:46 to 4 is not working at this time, right? It's just not a part of your schedule. Um, and so each 15-minute time block has the same list of activities. So for each 15 minutes, you just go down and select what you were doing during that time. Now, one common question that we have is, I do more than one thing in 15 minutes. How do I pick? Right? In 15 minutes, you could have a phone call from a parent, assist a student who comes into your office who needs something, and enter one thing in Infinite Campus, right? I mean, that's just the truth of how it goes during the day. What we're asking folks to do is to pick whatever was the main activity during that time. Um, if we broke it down any further than 15 minutes, this would have just been way too it's already cumbersome. It'd be way too cumbersome if we did it even smaller increments than that. We do have, like I said, if you selected other not listed in any of the time slots, you do have the opportunity to put in what you were doing during that time. And then the next question is, did you work past normal hours today? And that is if you were working earlier than your scheduled time or if you worked later than your scheduled time. If you click yes to that, it takes you to another section to do the same thing, to select an activity of what you were doing during those outside of normal hours. If you select no, you're finished with the form, right? You only see that next question if you select yes. It gives you the opportunity to show what you were doing during that non-scheduled work time. This survey was based on the time study survey that is completed by the school counselors. And I don't know if they do that every year or if it's every other year. I'm not sure what their cadence is with their time studies, but we did base our design off that one. So that's how we came up with 15-minute increments and having the same list of activities for each one of those. All right. So you would do a form for each of the 10 days. So you could, if you decide to participate, you could do this form throughout the day. You could collect it all on your calendar and then fill it all in at a later time, just depending on what your work, style is. We do have let me show you this if I can get to it here. Stop sharing for a second. And while I'm finding this list, if anybody has any questions, be happy to answer questions about the form itself. So one of the tools that was actually made by a coordinator who has participated in the time study in the past couple of sessions, she made this spreadsheet. And I think that what she does is she prints it and has it on a clipboard. And so that throughout the day, she can just put a checkbox in here so that she doesn't have to try to remember at the end of the day or at the end of the week or whenever she's decided to put, enter in her information into the Google form. She can just go back to this spreadsheet that she made. And we'll share this with anybody who signs up for the time study. You'll have access to this so that you can make your own copy of that. I have talked with coordinators who have just used their calendar or just use a notepad and jotted things down and entered them in. There was one, I think I've only talked to one coordinator who said they just left the Google form open and just filled it out, as they went. I don't know if that would necessarily be my style of doing the data entry, but everybody can pick what works for them the best if they decide to participate. So, but we will make all this available to folks so you can use it however it makes sense. So, any questions? All right. Then I want to find, here we are, talk just a little bit about the post survey. So this is where we will collect some of that demographic information. So for the coordinators who participate, once we get to the end of the reporting period, we'll be sending out this post survey. And in this, we just ask, how long have you been a coordinator? What's your education level? Number of staff working in the center? And then we ask if there are more than one staff, what are they? That's not a very nice way of saying that, is it? Is it a center assistant? Is it an AmeriCorps member? Is it a volunteer that serves on a regular basis? Now, this this isn't the volunteer that comes in every once in a while or on Fridays and fill in a backpack. This is somebody who's there several times throughout the week, who could almost be considered another staff person in the school. We're going to ask what your center type is, and then just how do you feel? I want to get some fluffy feedback on that, right? How do you feel about how you spend your time at work? Is it positive? Is it, do you feel like your days are just too crazy? What's a sense, right, of how the day is going? So again, this is for the folks who complete the time study. So this is how we collect that data, that demographic data. So any questions about the post survey or why we're getting that, or lots of this information is actually in FRYSC counts also, like your center type and number of staff and all that. It's just a little bit easier if we can get you guys to answer it instead of having to look each individual center up in FRYSC count.
I have a question.
Yes.
So if we're like in a meeting for like an hour, we would just say for that entire 15-minute increments, whatever that category was for each thing. Just do.
Yeah. So you would have 4 15-minute increments that said meeting. Yeah.
Okay. And then I have one more question. Whenever we're working like outside of our work hours, would we put not working during this time, or we would put what we're working on, and then you would click the other part that said, yes, I worked outside my hours?
Yeah. So there's this question, right? Did you work past normal work hours? And once you click yes on that, it gives you the opportunity to select from the same list of activities.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thanks.
Good questions. Thank you. Lots of coordinators work past their normal work hours. Is anybody surprised by that? and coordinators don't take many breaks. Is anybody surprised by that?
And when you mentioned that 30-minute lunch break, whenever you first started talking, I thought, oh, what's that?
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? And to me, that can also got a lot of discussions around, and I hate to say the words, but self-care, right? And like recognizing that taking 30 minutes is really good for everybody. And look, I am so guilty of this. I eat lunch in front of my computer doing work almost every day. And I don't have kids coming in here all the time, so I really don't have an excuse for it. So it's hard for me to get on to people about that. But I think it's good to collect that information to have a larger discussion with, our leadership, that can then spread that to, whether that's school leadership, if we're having conversations, with folks at Pritchard and talking about different policy decisions, all that kind of stuff. It's interesting information. So.
Melissa, somebody did ask, and you may have just answered this, but it says, "What if your day starts before 7:30?" I know we talked about going beyond the normal work day, but what if it starts before?
Well, that's interesting. Let me stop sharing so I can see more of the screen. Can I get if you guys can use your raise hand if you start before 7:30? All right, so I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh gosh. Okay. Do you start at 7? Okay, getting thumbs up on 7. Okay. So we can and as a matter of fact, the last round we did start this at 7. We did 7 to 7:15, 7:16 to 7:30, 7:30, so we can add those back in. We just found that we had a vast majority of not working during that time, for
Our
those
school
time slots. So
it's 50. We have to be
what's
here.
that?
We have to be here at 6:50.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Lord. All right, I'll make a note of that. We can add that back in.
Yeah. And that's when the kids get here. So most people get here before 6:50. So
What other questions? Well, I'm going to put a link in the chat that is our interest form. And I believe some of you have already filled this out, if I'm not mistaken. But if you haven't and are interested in joining us in the Tom study, we would really appreciate if you filled out the interest form. So what we'll do is that will become the list of people that we start emailing all the time. I don't want to email all 961 coordinators when there's, only 140 of them that want to participate in this. So we try to narrow that down with our interest survey. Now, you don't have to fill out that interest form to participate in the time study. So if you don't fill it out and it comes down to the end of April and you decide you do want to do it, you can just either reach out to me or reach out to your regional program manager, and we can make sure that you have the information. What we will do once we get closer to opening up the Tom study is we will schedule a couple of technical assistance Zoom calls where it won't be like a presentation, but it'll be an opportunity to connect in and get any questions answered. We'll probably do that once probably before the Tom study opens, and then once maybe like after a week and a half or 2 weeks into the Tom study, so we can help anybody that has questions. Again, it'll just be an opportunity to jump on a Zoom call and get a question answered really fast. It won't be a formal kind of presentation like this. So, but those will be those invitations and information will be sent to the people who are on the interest form. So again, don't want to spam people if they are like, you're crazy. I'm not telling you every 15 minutes. That's too much. It is a lot. And again, I want to say that. I want to say that we all of us who have worked on this project recognize how much we're asking of the coordinators, of you guys, and how much we appreciate everybody who has been willing to participate with us. The information has been very eye-opening and very useful. Just one quick example. I had it in my head to redo some home visit training because we haven't really spent a whole lot of time, talking about home visit training. The last 3 sessions of the time study have showed that home visits are not something that happens that often based on the information that we've received back. I think that COVID really changed the way that happened, that those things happen in the schools. Now, that's not to say people aren't doing home visits. They absolutely are doing home visits, but it's not so much time being spent doing that let's see, how do I put this? The importance of redoing that training kind of got lower on the list. We didn't see that as a big of a need of coordinators at this present time. It's not off the list. It's just not at the top of the list anymore of trainings to redo. So there is still training on the training hub for that. New coordinators have to do that training. So. But that's just one example of being able to use this data to make decisions on where to put your resources. When you have limited resources, sometimes you need some guidance on how to use them. So Quentin didn't have to redo the home visit training. He could spend his time doing other things. All right. What other questions do you guys have? All right. Well, that's all the information I have to share with you guys today. Again, I would encourage you to participate with us if you haven't already filled in the interest form. It's incredibly useful information and it's an important story to tell. So thank you all very much for your time this afternoon. If something comes up, if you're like me, I always think of a question an hour after the webinar's over with. Please feel free to email me or give me a call. My contact information's on the training hub. Would be happy to talk with you individually if you have individual questions about it. So appreciate the opportunity, you guys. And I think Quentin has some housekeeping information for us now.
Yeah, I talked to Beth, and what we're going to do, we're just, instead of having their normal survey link, Melissa just dropped the time study interest form in there. So we'll have that for those that want to do that. But I am going to give you the PD tracking code so you can get an hour of professional development for this. Give me just a moment as well. I'm going to get to the main page. I'm going to share the Training Hub website with you. That way you can bookmark it if you don't have it. And if you do
how many
have
folks
it, great.
How many folks have used the Training Hub? And everybody better say yeah.
So there's the approval code with the training name. You should be able to put that approval code in your PD tracking form. It should auto-populate all the information for you so you can get credit for this. And as I said earlier, Melissa Newton will take this, she'll edit it, get it added to the training hub. So if someone missed the information or if there's something maybe you missed, you can go back and rewatch that. And then we've also, like I said, I've supplied you with the training hub website as well. So you can bookmark that. And if there are no other questions, that'll be it for today. Once again, thanks for taking the time out of your day to join us, and thank you for considering joining the time study. Like I said, we do all this stuff, as Melissa said, not to try to micromanage, but to try to find out what we can do to help you. So we appreciate everything that you do.
Everybody go enjoy the beautiful day.